We're looking at armbars, Jujigatami, from guard position. One of the absolute most important elements when you're entering into the Jujigatami is the relationship between your opponent's head and elbow and your hip. Okay, those three things, his head, his elbow, and your hip, will determine how successful you are at getting into Jujigatami from bottom position. Let's have a look at some of the keynote themes that I want you to become expert at as we work here. We've got a training partner here in a closed guard situation. Okay, you go to Jiu-Jitsu 101 on YouTube and you'll see armbars typically demonstrated with something like this. Okay, a 2-on-1 grip where I take an over grip on my training partner's elbow, put a hand on my training partner's wrist, and we work from here. Now in a beginner's class, this is just fine because your opponent doesn't know enough to escape. But at advanced levels, this is not going to cut it because there is no control of my opponent's head. Okay, even if I did succeed in bringing my opponent's elbow towards my center line, as his head rises, it becomes impossible for me to control the head, and his elbow starts moving away from my hips, and we lose the whole position. Okay, so there's a sense in which I've got to control his head. That's the key to controlling his posture. But at the same time, I've got to bring his elbow towards my center line. So ideally, what we want is two kinds of control: control of the head and his elbow. I want to take his elbow towards my center line, and I want to bring his head down. Ideally, I'm looking to put his head, his forehead in particular, directly over his elbow. That's the ideal. Okay, will you always be able to get that? No, but you want to get as close as you can. That's the ideal that you're striving for. Ultimately, what I want to do is I want to ensure at all times Placido's elbow goes inside my hip. That's the minimum requirement. Okay, so the best is when the elbow goes at least to my center line, and the very best is where it goes across the center line. That's almost guaranteed to score you armbars. But the minimum requirement is that his elbow must be inside my hip. Okay, if I cannot do that, then realistically you can't really expect to hit armbars on good people. If his elbows stay outside my hips, strong elbow, I can't turn and pivot and get the angle that I need to get into an armbar. So everything we need to do is bound up the idea of bringing the elbow towards the center line, and the minimum requirement, once again, to get the elbow inside my hip. At the same time, I've got to control his head, so he can't just posture up and away from me. And ideally, I would like to bring his head directly over his own elbow. That's going to make it very easy for me to throw up a top lock and bind my training partner into place. And now you can see the results of our work. I have put his elbow very obviously inside my hip. If he tried to take his elbow outside my hip, it would run directly into my inner leg and hamstring muscles, and it's not going to move. So it's locked in place now. I haven't just gotten the position, I'm now holding it courtesy of this top lock. And from here, it's going to be relatively easy for us to maintain the position we want, get our lower back up off the floor, and then throw our legs into place and get to the arm lock position we're looking for. So once again, our whole thing is to get away from traditional methods where we just use a 2-on-1 control on the arm and do nothing to control the head. It's not going to cut it at elite levels of competition. Okay, you can get that at beginner levels. It's tough to get that on the best people. So what we're typically looking to do is bring everything in towards the center line and then go in and control our training partner's head. Then we're going to get a small angle and we're going to throw our legs up into a top lock. Once that top lock is attained, you see now the elbow is locked well inside my hip. That's always my goal. His elbow inside your hip. Okay. Once we're there, then it's all about that pivot to an angle that brings us around to at least 90 degrees on our opponent, and sometimes even more. From here, my two lower legs point in the same direction, and as a result, it's an easy thing for us to go over the top and get downward pressure on our training partner's head. From here, we have the option of finishing from bottom or putting the man over and finishing from on top. But the key element I want you guys fixating on is this idea that if we're going to enter into Jujigatami from bottom position, we've got to do a good job of controlling the head, bringing the elbow to the center line, with the ultimate goal, the minimum goal, of putting his elbow inside my hip. Once it's inside the hip, trust in your top lock to keep it there long enough to get the pivot turn and entry into the lock.